Hello everybody. This is our monthly podcast on physical health, mental health, and kind of wellness. We do this podcast every month. We try to invite colleagues, peers from kind of the wellness or self-care industry to share ideas and experiences about how do we take care of ourselves? How do we improve our lives? How do we kind of keep things in mind that might improve our quality of life day to day, not just like in a talking about it, but like applying it. Today we have a very interesting guest, Dr. Mitch Israel, who's going to talk with us about kind of physical health, movement, and taking care of one's body. I think it's going to be a really nice conversation and something that probably we all sort of think about in some way, but I think we're going to get into some of the details of why does it matter? How do we do it? What if we're coming back from an injury? Or what about for different ages, right? People who, different ages or stages of their lives might have different challenges when it comes to kind of, how to move and how to be active, right? So we're going to get into some of those topics. Dr. Israel or Mitch, if you could please just give us a sense of like, what's your background? Like, how did you, your training, how did you get into this kind of work? What are you doing now? Just so the audience kind of knows a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a chiropractor by trade, but usually when you think of chiropractor, you think of, crack, doing adjustments. But I kind of label myself more as a sports chiropractor because I'm a rehab specialist too. So I'm actually trained in more physical therapy techniques than chiropractic techniques. But I'm also a strength coach. So what I do is I combine all those different trainings into a system that I use at my clinic, Simio Sports Therapy here in Farmington Hills.
Yeah,
So yeah, a lot of times I talk to people, they think they know what chiropractic is, and obviously there's a generic kind of chiropractic out there. And I do adjust patients, but I blend that with manual therapy, as far as like soft tissue and muscle release techniques. But
sure.
then the secret sauce is reinforcing the treatment with movements,
I
specific
see.
movements that the person needs to reinforce the things that we're trying to change, right?
I see.
And then everybody needs to get stronger. So after they move better, feel better, then we have to introduce strength training on top of that.
That's really interesting. So in a way, hi Bill. In a way, I guess one thing I hear you're saying is it's incremental, kind of building on one step after another, so to speak,
Mhm.
and then somehow like integrating into one's life. It makes me what you were saying. I'm a therapist by background, so I think of when I think of mental health therapy, I think of well, that sounds kind of similar. You do an assessment, you
Mhm.
start from what the person's kind of strengths and vulnerabilities are, and then you help them to sort of develop skills, abilities, or practices that they could gradually apply to their life. And then as they build on that, they could, develop strengths, abilities, right? So it's very interesting. It's kind of like an incremental growth or improvement, something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's finding everybody's foundation. So Um, I use a modern AI technology during my assessment. So I take them through a full body movement assessment where we calculate their range of motion in real
Yeah.
time. And then also I developed something called the movement age score. So just based on how someone's body moves, we can correlate that to how they move compared to their actual age,
Mm.
which a lot of people I see, 83% of people I assess move older than their actual age, which is just a kind of a fun score that you can see, but it just tells us that our movement quality as a society is a lot lower than it should be. And then we wonder why, oh, we have constant aches and pains, especially from
Yeah.
the desk workers, or they get easily injured when they try to be more active because the foundation of their movement isn't set up before they want to build higher level activities on top of it.
That's interesting. Well, and I know prior, before when we were kind of chatting about sort of some podcast topics,
Mhm.
this idea of movement, how we move, moving in everyday life, somehow integrating movement into our lives. I know that's something you care about. Can you maybe just say a little bit more about what's the importance of movement? Or like, I mean, there's kind of like a logical aspect to it, right? We're sort of our bodies are not designed to be we didn't sort of evolve to sit around all day, but
Yep.
I'm sure there's more to it, right? Like movement there's like an important health, like there's like a healing or health aspect to, even one can even feel it like sort of intuitively. Like if you sit at the office all day and then you go home, you feel like, oh, I don't feel as good. I
Yeah.
don't feel well. But if you even go for a walk, like you sort of start to feel better, right? So, but I wonder, like, what's from a sort of your professional background? How do you understand that? What do you make of that?
So yes, movement, it's kind of it's a broad thing
For
that we
sure.
talk about. So I like to kind of dissect it into different areas. But the main thing is our bodies were designed to move. I mean, we have, ball and socket joints in our shoulders and
Yeah.
our hips that are designed to get into end ranges. But if we never go there, then the body says, "Hey, we don't use this anymore," and then, the walls start kind of caving in over time.
Sure.
Um, so when it comes to, I would say from like a clinical perspective, if someone starts to lose movements and they want to do activities, if their body isn't prepared for the activities that they want to do, then we're just asking for an injury to occur.
Yeah. Sure.
So that's where just movement as a whole is super important. But also there is a mental aspect to it where a lot of it that I see comes from confidence, where if someone doesn't move well and they get injured all the time, especially the same injury over and over again, they start to lose confidence in their body. And then they start to think they can't do the things that they love to do, and then they stop doing it, and then their life kind of shrinks. So then it can have a kind of mental emotional aspect when it comes to that. But if you just move more, especially with the current capabilities of your body, you tend to feel better. Like you mentioned, walks. Hey, I've been
Yeah.
sitting at the desk for half the day. Let me walk after lunch, get some blood flow, which is super important.
For sure.
But even training joints with something like we call mobility training. So it's a little different than yoga. Most people have heard of yoga. Mobility training is more specific. So, like if I assess you and your shoulder's not moving well, I'm not going to give you a full body routine. We're just going to do something very specific to the shoulder to open up those ranges.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're stimulating, well, like, nerd out, you're stimulating mechanoreceptors that haven't been stimulated in a while. So then you start to build a stronger neurological connection to that area of your body. And then you could start to feel better. But also, once you know how you can move, um, your confidence can go up depending on what your activities are. Or a lot of times people, I have to like pause. Hey, I know you want to golf right now. Golf is my goal to get you back 18 holes without any back pain, but you don't have the capabilities to do that right now. So a lot of times we peel back and give them specific movement strategies just based on where their body's at.
Yeah, it's funny when you were saying about somebody who doesn't move. I think of my parents are like they contrast each other. My dad will like go to the gym once a year, and then he'll say, "Oh, I don't know, I got hurt. Like I'm not gonna do this. Why why am I working out?" And my
Yeah.
mom walks like 2 miles a day or 4 miles. I don't know. She's like very active. So
Hmm.
it's just funny to think about like how one's routines or like yeah, it makes sense if one actively uses their body, probably feel more confident, more healthy, more like
Yeah.
overall sense of well-being, right? You can kind of you move through the world with like, confidence or feeling strong, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's where a lot of people I see they've never had their movement assessed,
I see.
especially at the level that we do it. So like they're just kind of blindly trying to introduce activities. Or like a
For sure.
common thing I see is, ooh, I just hit, 40. I know I got to be more active. I Then they go back to doing the things that they were doing in high school or their early 20s when they were in college, and then wondering why they end up hurting themselves in the gym because your body has changed if you don't continue to move. So that's where a lot of times we peel back. Like, hey, the goal is to get you stronger, get you more fit. A lot of people have body composition goals that I see, but that's not the first domino. I'm a big believer you can't fit square pegs into round holes. So if you don't have the movement capabilities to do a squat, then we're not going to load you up with more weight on a squat. We're going to unlock that movement. And then once they unlock that, not only do they feel better, but they feel more confident that their body can do that activity. And then if you just introduce the right amount of load or weight or repetitions over time based on what their body can do, it's a nice linear progression instead of trying to guess and then you get like the, two steps forward, one step back, um, kind of response.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think it's easy to watch. There's so much like kind of video content in the world. It's easy to watch videos of people working out or lifting heavy weights or doing all kinds of crazy routines but I think to your point, like it's much more realistic to think about where am I in my life right now? What's my baseline? What are my goals and how can I sort of over time, we in our work, so Bill is a neuropsychologist, but we in our office we're both mental health professionals, and we have other colleagues that work with us that kind of develop their practice, they develop their referral base. So we help patients, but we also help professionals to kind of develop their careers. And so
Hmm.
we often talk about sort of long-term goals, like a year or two kind of long-term goals. What are the incremental steps? Yes, I want to be at X step in a year or 2 years. What do I need to do daily or weekly or monthly to get there? And it's much, I think, as you're saying, it's much more realistic and like it doesn't sound as exciting as I'm going to be, bench pressing 200 pounds or something. But on the other hand, it's much more realistic and gratifying, and you can actually see your growth because if you know where you are and you have a realistic plan, you're going to actually make real progress and not, hopefully, not get hurt, or do things like that, right? It's kind of
Hmm.
the reality, the fantasy sounds cool, but the reality is also really rewarding and productive. I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I tend to see more of like the middle-aged population, so probably anywhere between like 35 and 60. And they're usually active, or they have like a second wind and they know they need to
Yeah,
be more active, whether they're getting regular physicals and they, find other health issues.
sure,
But it's everything's, meeting them where they're at. So, I mean, I see some, power lifters and more strength sport athletes, and their goals are obviously different.
for sure.
The goal is not to, one rep max, if you're a 55-year-old executive kind of thing. Now, if that's your goals, I'll get you there. But I tell everybody, like, my personal goals and they tend to align with a lot of people I see is I just want to be limber and strong. So, I want to be able
Yeah,
to move my body
sure.
for activities that I want to do, whether it's golf, pickleball's huge, very fun, by the way. Um, so, on a drop of a dime, I'm not thinking about my body and if I could do this right now. I just
For
do
sure.
the activity. But you have to have a level of strength there too. So, like an example I always give is everybody knows a yogi who does yoga, 4 days a week. Usually very limber, but you're probably not going to ask them to help you pick up something heavy. And then you have your power lifters or the super heavy lifters, strength sport athletes. They look like they can barely even rotate.
For
I'd
sure.
say the balance is in the middle where you want strength, you want mobility, but you want that balance between the two so you're capable
I
to do
see.
the things that you want.
That's interesting. That makes sense. Bill, what do you think? I know we were talking
Yeah. No, this
before the
is,
podcast
yeah.
about this topic. It's something that Bill
Yeah.
was a tennis player at one point. I played
Oh,
tennis these days,
nice.
so we were sort of chatting about movement and sports, or
Yeah. Yeah. As a neuropsychologist, one of the fascinating pieces of research, line of research that I'm familiar with is the relationship of lower limb fitness to brain health. I don't know if you've heard about that connection, but um, there is an
Uh,
emerging science that is making that connection.
as far as like just having like strong neurological connections to those areas, or
It's
um,
actually, I wish I were more familiar with the research, but it's actually more neurochemical.
oh, okay.
So are you saying,
Yeah.
Bill, that skipping leg day also is bad for one's mental health? Is that
Skipping leg day is not good,
Never
right?
never skip leg day.
Right.
Non-negotiable.
Right. But actually the other kind of thing that's really generally accepted in neuropsychology circles is that strength training actually is better for brain health overall than is cardiovascular training.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's uh, my hypothesis would be just as they strength train, they see the weight going up, and
sure?
then as they become more comfortable with it over time, then they start to they absolutely trust what they're doing because they're doing it more consistently. So
Yeah.
as they get stronger, they can feel they're getting stronger, the
Yeah.
weights are going up. And then I would say like if people start to see it physically, like,
Yeah.
I'm not a big track your weight kind of person. I'm
Yeah.
more like, hey, what's your body fat percentage, muscle mass? But if those numbers start to change, then
Yeah.
that could build more trust in the
Yeah,
in your
yeah, yeah.
body as
And
well.
yeah, and you made a great point too. I mean, a major point is that it's not just strength, it's mobility plus strength, that balance, which is really important. This is good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how young of people, how far down the age do you go?
How far down the chain?
Yeah.
So I would say the youngest I'm working with right now is a 25-year-old in grad school. And ironically, she's 25. We did the movement assessment with her, and she had a movement age of 50. So it's one of those things. Now, luckily, she's in her 20s. I'm not gonna. She should rebound. It's funny how it correlates. Each a decade, there's a significant drop off. I mean, in your 20s, I mean, you're probably dominating. Both of you were dominating on the tennis court, right? Probably multiple
Especially
times.
Bill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they can usually people in their 20s rebound very quickly. A lot of times they don't even seek care because they just, hey, let me give this a couple weeks and then they bounce back. Not always, but a good portion of the time. And then the 30s is when it starts to change, where you're basically usually it's busy professionals, primarily desk working positions. And that's when the walls initially start closing in to where you can still recover pretty quickly. But it's kind of like a silent killer because it hasn't hit you just yet unless you have like an actual
Mm,
injury. And those people in their 30s recover very quickly. That's like the last decade where you can get like really fast change. Typically, I mean, this is I'm going
for
off
sure.
of
Yeah.
averages.
Yeah.
40 is when hey, you've been working at that desk job for at least, maybe, 15, 20
Right.
years.
Right.
So you can still see change quickly. I'd say that's like in the middle where, hey, we know how you're moving, but I like to differentiate between like when I'm checking someone's joint mobility, is this hard tissue or soft tissue restriction? So hard tissue would be bone, that would be like arthritic changes.
Mm,
Those start to be noticeable 50s and 60s. 40s, you're right on the edge of like, hey, if we don't, you're tight, but we can kind of work into that range, which means, hey, this is just soft tissue, muscle, ligaments. So we can still unlock this range, but then in that next decade, that's where more hard tissue starts to take an effect. And if you don't do something in your 50s, that's when, I mean, it's a slippery slope. And then I see a handful of people in their 60s, they're already active, which is really cool to see. It's funny, I've a couple of people in their 60s move younger than their age. So that's where I've just noticed from my experience, it correlates with how active you are, it tends to, you know, be how well active you are later on. But if you're active for an extended period of time, you tend to hold on to those changes, especially if you don't stop.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting what you're saying, Mitch, because so I'm 43. Nowadays, I started playing tennis when I was 37, I think. And now a lot of the players I play, sometimes they'll be like in their 20s. And it's tough because they're I'm still probably one of the faster people on the court, but their recovery time, their endurance, you could just see their kind of the way they move is they have sort of more energy maybe. So I have to be kind of smarter and say, okay, I have to strategize and, and think
Yes, yeah.
strategically because I can't just overpower, brute strength, so to speak, doesn't work. It has to be more strategy or more, something like that. More
Yeah,
wisdom than
absolutely. Well, and that's
Finesse.
where,
Yeah.
yeah, that's where you can you just gotta prepare. And the big thing is you just knowing what your body needs. So my favorite saying that I tell every patient is everybody and everybody is different. So, what are your previous experiences? Obviously, previous injuries take effect. What are your
Yeah,
kind of work positions? I wish there was a one size fits all blueprint because it would make my life a lot easier. But it just, hey, what's limited? And a lot of times people only have like one, maybe two areas. And then if we just get them a consistent 5 minute daily routine for that body area, they know how to brush and floss their kind of weakest links when it comes to their movement. So I got nothing against yoga. I think it's a great mind body
mm,
practice.
for sure.
I personally I teach people how to move. It's not my cup of tea. I'm all about minimum effective dose. So what's the least amount of work that we can do to yield the best result, right? And a lot of times it's just 5 minutes a day. That's all it takes. But if you're doing random stuff, I mean, I post a lot of routines and stuff on social media. So
Yeah.
if you're doing random stuff, it could help. But if you know where your body's limited, it's actually very, very simple and it doesn't take much work at all.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about probably a lot of times we probably all know people who maybe they want to move more or they know it's important, but getting going can be difficult or sticking with it can be hard, right? I read this kind of nice article a few years ago in the Wall Street Journal where this sort of like health fitness person, he made this point that for most people it's hard to do physical activity on their own on a regular basis. And so rather than being like self-critical and sort of like feeling bad, sometimes it helps to find like a social group, like a run club, if or like tennis
Absolutely.
is kind of a social sport, or I don't know, it could be a walking group, or right. It's trying to find ways that are somehow we incorporate into our life so that so that it, like makes it more natural, or more or easier to do, or easier to sustain. Like, how do you what do you see like in terms of the patients you work with? How does a person go from I don't move enough, or I know I need to do this, or how do what helps somebody kind of sustain that diet, so to speak, of like healthy living, healthy moving? Like how do you see it?
Yeah, so well, I'm gonna be biased with what I personally do
Sure.
in practice. So I would say the buy-in happens pretty early. Once I take them through a full movement assessment, I actually we go through. I use a software on an iPad. I'll click on their dysfunctional movements, and then I'll just play them for them, and just
I see.
let them watch it. And the reactions are always interesting. Sometimes it's like, oh, turn it off, or oh my gosh, I moved that way, and I'm like, hey, and you've been doing, heavy squats at the gym, like you can't even do an air squat with, proper posture. So a lot of times they see it for themselves, so they get that
Yeah.
immediate connection, which is super powerful.
Sure.
But I make it as easy as possible. So when I work with someone, I have them I have a training app. They download it and I preload their, 5 minute routines in
Yeah.
there. So they get, constant reminders because a lot of this stuff you could do at home, at the office.
Sure.
Almost everything I prescribe, there's no equipment. It's all just body weight kind of exercises and stretches. So I make it as low, you know, low barrier to success as possible. And
Mm.
then I'm seeing them on a somewhat regular basis, depending on, what their active symptoms are. So if I see them once a week or once every couple weeks, I bring up their data. Hey, whoa, the last 7 days, you only did 50% of your movements. Everything okay? Everything feeling all right? Oh yeah, I just didn't have time, and then, hey, where are you not finding the time? Having those discussions, hey,
Sure.
I'm only asking for a lot of times when I boil it down, sometimes I I don't try to make them feel bad, but like I'll be like, how many hours are in a week? And I'm like, I'm asking for, 5 minutes a day, for this particular thing. I mean, if they need strength training, obviously that takes a little bit more time.
For sure.
But like when you boil down the numbers, it's like I'm asking for 0.05, no, 0.005% of your overall week. So if you give me that, that's not a lot. And we're going to start seeing the results compounding. Because a lot of times it's people will try random stuff like maybe a 20-minute mobility routine, maybe even, a 45-minute yoga
Yeah,
class. But again, I'm all about less is more. If you know what you need and just do what you know you need to do, I mean, the results happen quickly. I like to say like my goal is, we want to create a masterpiece. And if I got a slab of stone right here, it starts with chiseling, right? We chisel, and then as we build momentum, maybe we can start getting off those bigger chunks as we're going. But it just takes consistency and it doesn't take that much time. So, I mean, when I'm working with them, I hold them accountable. I message them like, "Hey, I haven't seen you do this."
for sure.
Um, so I mean that's how I do it.
Yeah,
But I think the
no,
big thing is like if they have that accountability aspect, someone hawking over them, then it tends to get
for
done.
sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. When I've been a therapist for like almost 20 years, and my perspective on therapy has changed a lot because I used to think about it as like the ideas matter or the understanding matters, and that's all true. But somehow, like the collaboration between two people who are sort of aligned on some goals or work close, like the therapist and the patient, so to speak, somehow that relationship, not just the relationship itself, like what happens and the work that happens is important, of course, but that connection and collaboration, I think, makes a difference because somehow having a human being in one's life who's sort of like paying attention and is present and like we were kind of joking about this earlier. I think you're such a friendly guy, Mitch. Like I can't imagine somebody coming to see you and saying, "Wow, what a friendly, thoughtful person." I can't help but want to have the relationship go well. I'm going to do these exercises.
Well,
I want
hopefully.
Mitch to be happy with me. I want him to like me. He's such a cool guy, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that
Yes.
relationship element. I'm sure for the patients you work with, for example, helps.
Well, yeah, because they give me their goals. So the whole program I build is, hey, your goals are the North Star, and here's the exact path to get here.
Sure.
And then like the frequency on how much I see someone in person is how much like hands-on care do I think they need to reach that goal
Yeah,
within the time frame that we discuss.
for sure.
So yeah, I would say most people are on board. I mean, I make it as palatable as possible to get there as fast as possible with as little work as possible. It's all about
How
efficiency.
how often? And Bill, please feel free to jump in. I just
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. Yeah.
how how often? Just one more question. How often are like for your typical person, could be any age. Like how often do you think should they see you in person? Should they? I know. I guess it depends on their particular situation, but like on average, what would you say? Like, are they seeing you once a month, twice a month, every week, daily?
So so it depends. Like if we're in I would say if they're not, if they're a acute pain
Yeah,
patient, then I'm probably seeing them on a weekly basis
for sure.
because it's more treatment focused. So it's depending on what's going on. Hey, I have to do more of the heavy lifting. You still have homework to
I
do,
see. I
but
see.
I can get you there quicker with the treatment aspects that we'll introduce. But I would say if like if it's the average person, hey, I want to be more active. I know my movement doesn't feel the way it used to, or I think my posture sucks is a common one I hear. Um, then that's probably maybe bi-weekly for maybe 3 months or so. So
Sure.
like building that momentum, like here's your play book. But I found if I go too far between seeing them, they fall off. So like I always tell everybody like the first week we start a program, here's the program. We're going to meet back up in a week. we're learning the tango here. Depending on what you do over this next week gives me the idea of the best way to program for you to get you to
I
your goal.
see. I see.
So then I'll be like, hey, if you see me more, you'll reach your goals, quicker, and you could still reach your goals and do less at home, but that means you got to pay me more. So like I'm trying to find that perfect blend where I want you to do the things at home because you start to build trust and confidence in your body without me. But also, if I know you're going to fall off if we spend hey, between now and a month, then it always depends. It's always the boring
For
answer,
sure. No,
but
that makes sense. No, no, it's okay. I understand.
it's fluid.
Yeah, I get it. I think Bill, you were starting to say something.
Sure. I was going to ask, does balance come into play here? And how do you assess and deal with it? People who either report balance problems or you objectively observe balance problems. Is that connected to what you might be doing to help a person?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, balance we can just see in, a single leg stance. Usually you go, eyes open first, and then if they crush that, then you go eyes closed. And that just helps you, and also just seeing them lunge, that's a huge one. If people look like they're out on ice, you can see balance is an issue. But I mean, don't quote me on any statistics. I won't throw any out there, but I think balance is one of the strongest correlators to, physical longevity and just morbidity or mortality risk is a common
Mhm.
thing that happens as
Yeah,
we get older. If we fall and break a hip, I mean, the odds of
sure.
someone, being with you more than a year after that is staggering. So
Yeah.
um, balance is huge, but it just depends on is it coming from the visual system, vestibular system, proprioception. So there's ways of assessing where there's limitations in all of them, and then the strategies just fit wherever the weakest link,
Hmm.
if that makes
Got it.
sense.
Yeah, sure.
But a lot of times, just as they move more, maybe do more lunging activities, maybe some more single leg exercises. Um, I would say just them being confident that they can balance, like can flip a switch, and then as long as you keep training those things and add some weight or some repetitions over time, I mean that confidence and strength only gets better. Hopefully that answered it. I can ramble.
No,
Yeah,
no, no,
no,
no, no.
that's
That's helpful.
great. That's great. A lot of my patients will, from time to time, report balance problems, which is causes causes anxiety, actually. It's
Oh,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
related to anxiety.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and balance, there's a lot of, core strength is required for balance. So we
Hmm.
always do a core strength assessment or assessment during our full body assessment. So just seeing where those limitations are. Now,
Yeah.
I wish there was just, one thing, but usually, I mean, the body is a system, right?
Yeah.
So it's just knowing where you have limitations within the system, and very rarely is it just one thing. But I always go after the low-hanging fruit. Where can we make some quick change, get some quick wins, build some confidence, and that kind of unlocks the next stage, and then you just kind of use that momentum until they're at a spot where they need to be.
It's interesting. Mitch, do you ever work with do you ever work with like groups? Like for example, like one of the things I have found interesting is aside from yoga, it's really hard to find like like classes that focus on stretching. I think stretching like now that I play tennis all the time, I found stretching really important. Doing
Hmm.
it on my own doesn't necessarily work that well. So I sometimes I think like these things are like they're. It's nice to do something when you have like a like speaking of accountability or cohorts, right, or shared activity. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you ever find that group work helps? Do you ever do that kind of stuff? Or I don't know how much interest there is in that from like the community, but
So I haven't dabbled yet. I mean, hey, if we want to poll the community and see, um, I haven't done anything specific to it. But
yeah,
as far as like in-person groups,
sure, sure.
but I've done like cohorts and stuff online. I mean, I collect or I came up with a movement age score. So I do a move younger daily. So I post something every day that's less than
I
a
see.
5 minute routine on my
I
social
see.
media,
I see.
whether it's hips, shoulders, core. So just something like, I call it snack size. You're just kind of dipping your toes and seeing how your body moves. But no, I haven't put together anything like, hey, we get a group together and showing some common mobility exercises. The tricky thing is, man, it's efficient. So like, I'd almost feel bad getting people together for like 15 minutes and they're already feeling like smoked afterwards. So that's where uh, I try to make it super palatable. So that's where usually I just share content online because they could do it
For
right
sure.
where.
No, that
Uh,
makes sense because part of the reason I ask is because we sometimes, so Bill and I have done a number of these. Sometimes companies will call us in for like wellness, right? Usually for like mental health month or other things, and they'll say, "Can you give a talk or presentation or conversation about wellness?" Right? And we talk about self-care, emotional regulation, self-esteem, kind of like knowing oneself, making good decisions, things like that, things that we do. Like Bill, a lot of Bill's experience and expertise is in like areas of like ADHD, for example, or learning disabilities, things that one might be helped to know about oneself so that I can kind of adjust, if I can adjust for how I learn or how I function best or how I work best or interact with others. So we do a
yeah.
lot of these kind of like community presentations, but I think that movement and physical, if you think about office workers or people who are, a lot of us work in offices and sort of sit, a lot of the day. Even our own, we have a group of about 40 clinicians who are part of our group. Most of the day we're sitting in our offices, sometimes doing online sessions or one-on-one. Some
Oh yeah.
movement, it just seems like creating sort of a culture of movement, of snackable, exercises, so to speak. It just sounds like such a positive thing that there are probably like many potential applications of people who really that could really add to their life. They might be already doing some other stuff. Maybe they're thinking about what kind of foods they eat, hopefully,
Hmm.
or they're thinking about how they respond to their emotional needs. This is like another kind of area of life that is really valuable and could be like a real positive. So
Yeah. Well, and speaking of content, I mean, I got desk worker routines, I got posture reset routines. I mean,
for sure.
all these assets already, these content assets already exist. So yeah, if you want, I got a really good posture reset. I mean, if you want to share that with your team and share it with the audience,
I
that would
think
be
if we
amazing.
could, I think if I'm being presumptuous here, but if we can get you to come with us to our next office-based presentation, I think it would be awesome for
For
people
sure.
Yeah.
to have a demonstration of what you can do. That office reset, I could see so much value in that
Yeah,
All right,
because
cool.
you walk into these buildings and you see people who are understandably they're sitting at their desk all day, kind of like on the
all day.
keyboard, and they don't even have sort of like a routine of the stuff that we're talking about in a way. And then they're probably the walls do sort of are closing in terms of their range of movement or things that so. It just seems like the stuff you're saying is so applicable to everyday life, and
Hmm.
probably like if one doesn't have, I find that role models can be really helpful. Like even in my own family, like having a parent who's like into sport, into kind of like into movement. I think that was a sort of a positive inspiration. Um, I think that something about seeing another person do it, or giving good input, or kind of being part of the journey of somebody's like, like you mentioned, coming back from an injury. I think that's important.
Hmm.
Usually, as time goes on, we all kind of probably face sort of, injuries or things that could come up and that would be hard to come. How does one come back from, yeah, like being hurt, coming back to being physically active in a thoughtful way, in a way that's mindful of their capacity, but doesn't overly limit maybe what they, doesn't overdo it. So that's
Yep.
kind of that's an interesting topic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you got to find that sweet spot. And if you have a previous injury, usually it makes it trickier. So usually in my my field, you think of the musculoskeletal health. So, muscles,
Yeah,
joints, but it's always the neuromusculoskeletal. So whenever there's a previous injury, especially if it still manifests somehow within the way that they move and function, uh, a lot of times that's what we're attacking first. Where if you move too much too quickly for what the body deems as safe, the alarm goes off and everything,
mm,
wants to protect, which could lead to, a very capped experience, especially if they're trying to recover something on their own. But that's where I always tell everybody, especially if I have someone like that, it's always, hey, right now we're just trying to get our foot in the door. Here's where we need to go, but sometimes, you know, sometimes, hey, are we going to the grocery store around the corner, or are we going up to, Traverse City? Those the routes are different, and they might take a little bit longer depending on what's going on. But the big thing is introducing movement that their nervous system deems as safe. And then you just got to kind of slow cook that
I
until
see.
you're ready to go to that next level. And then you start to add more.
See.
But yeah, that's where I see a lot of people with previous injuries. They know they need to get stronger, so they add strength, but the body finds that amount of load as a threat. So
See.
then it kind of sets them backwards and they get stuck in a perpetual loop where they know they got to do more, but every time they do, they set themselves backwards. And that's always I meet someone, I call that the frustration stage. That's where I tend to meet a lot of people. But yeah, that's where, like I said, everybody's different. So just
Yeah.
depends on where we're meeting them at and what's the main cause of their limitations.
I don't know if you see this in your work, Mitch, but again, just to give one more sort of personal example, one of the things that I think is interesting about movement and kind of physical fitness, I guess, is I think there could be an element of like social connection because if one is able to move and participate, it's like a way to participate in society. Sometimes, like I remember, maybe this was common during COVID, but even now, like sometimes you'll see people walk, like almost like groups who walk together. You see them kind of
Hmm.
in the neighborhood, or bike, like bicyclists. You see these often it's men, I guess it could be men or women, but on these like road bikes, and it's 6 a.m. and they're all it's raining and they're all like riding their bikes somewhere, and so there's like a
Oh
really
yeah.
cool social connect. Like we connect with each other in different ways, like we connect through work or through friendships or through family, but I think movement and physical exercise, I guess, in a way, there's like a could be like a community feeling to that too, right? That's probably like an
Yeah,
aspect of health there
absolutely.
too.
Well, I think that leverages a lot of things. Like, they've done research on the blue zones, and a lot of times they're physically active and they have a community aspect. So if you
Mm,
you put two pillars together into one, I would think you're going to get some better outcomes when
for
it comes
sure.
to that. Plus, when it comes to, being physical or working out, having like a workout partner, having someone accountable, or having someone hold you accountable,
For sure.
um, could help a lot just staying consistent. And then just like attracts like. So if you want to be healthier, more active, well, if you surround yourself by people that are
Yeah.
doing the same stuff, then your likelihood of success is so much higher. So
Sure.
yeah, no, I think there's definitely something to that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Bill is every time I'm in the office 5 minutes late, Bill's checking up on me and saying, I'm your accountability buddy. What are you doing? Why? So I think accountability is really important, and then kind of social connectedness. It helps. It's like a way of overcoming. Sometimes I think one of the obstacles to movement is like a person, you might be feeling tired or it's a long day or something is preoccupying you. And but if you have
Hmm.
somebody you're doing it with or somebody who's counting on you to be there or a friend or something, right? It's like a way to overcome some of that inertia, some of the initial maybe reluctance. It's like a way to say, oh yeah, I'm gonna see this person, or I'm gonna, I know that there's a positive aspect, right? Like a social element.
Hmm.
That could be a way to kind of keep doing something that I don't know, requires some degree of maybe physical challenge or overcoming maybe some barriers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're brewing up some stuff for me. Yeah, because I just started that Move Younger daily, those daily posts I've done. I just started that this week.
Yeah,
So I don't know, maybe I could turn that into like a Facebook group for people in the Metro Detroit area,
for sure.
and then maybe try to do meetups and stuff. I mean, the sky is the limit.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of I preach consistency. So my thing is, hey, I got to post every day. So we're
For sure.
starting with that, and then we'll see what that unlocks as that gets
Yeah.
too easy.
Well, I'll send
I
you a
think
text
that
in the morning and say, did you post today, Mitch? That could be your accountability.
That's fair. Hey, you can schedule posts now, so we're good for the next
That's true.
couple of weeks.
That's true. Bill, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was going to say the connection between movement and stress reduction is kind of an important connection. I mean, a lot of people who feel a tremendous amount of stress actually do the opposite of what would help, and that is they reduce their movement by, sitting around watching television or, eating or things like that, when in
Yep.
fact the very thing that could help them is the very thing that is not intuitive necessarily, and that is to move.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's a strong correlation. I don't know if you could tell, I like using analogies. I'm using some of my greatest hits that I talk to my patients with. But I don't know if you guys use like a cup analogy at all. So like I'll draw like a cup on my whiteboard
Yeah,
and then I'll put, hey, teenage kids, work stress, the cup
right.
starts filling up and then it overflows. And then usually, from my experience, it'll always manifest where there's pre-existing issues or previous issues. So if stress levels are high, oh man, that shoulder injury back in high school, I'm starting to feel it again. And my thing is, hey, it's above my pay grade to try to take stuff out of your cup. What I would rather do is build you a bigger cup so you can handle more of those stressors. So if you
Mhm.
move more, feel more confident, you're just stronger. Typically, your cup will be bigger. I mean, it still has its limiting point where it'll start to spill over, but at
Yeah.
least you can handle more. But also, if you're being active, you're probably reducing a lot of that stress along the way. So I think there's a strong correlation there too. So yeah, music to my ears.
One of the other cool things about this, I think, is I think our society, in a way, in some ways, we're too geared towards like items, like you need the right shoes, the right Apple Watch, the right whatever to kind of. But I think the cool thing about what you're saying is, yeah, equipment and having access to like or time obviously is a limiting factor, but like yeah, you want to
Mhm.
have walking shoes that function, but a lot of what I think you're saying has to basically we're using our bodies. It's not even necessarily requiring that much things yet one has to purchase, so to speak, but like it's like
Um,
using our in like biological resources, internal resources to kind of develop strength or routines. I think that's a really cool aspect because I think it sort of speaks to the person already brings to the table some strengths and competencies that they can kind of build on and do more with. You don't need to sort of have a shopping cart full of stuff to move and have that be
yeah,
part of one's routine. I think there's like an accessibility element that's really appealing about that.
yeah. I mean, it's a low barrier, right? All you need is your body. Like a common thing is like when I'm assessing someone, usually I find what we're looking for is, provocative activity. So what makes symptoms worse, but also the palliative activity. So what makes them feel better.
Mm.
And then I'll show them some movements. They start to, feel better within the visit. And they're like, so should I like ice or heat? And I'm like, well, I just showed you what movements to do to feel better. Like, what do you, you know?
What do you need the ice or heat
Yeah,
for?
yeah. I'm like, if you feel like you need ice or heat, just do your routine, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Again, those things can help, short term, but it's a smaller piece than just doing the right things to improve your movement quality.
No, it's really cool. I mean, we try to one of the things we try to emphasize in the podcast is sort of like a hopeful attitude, like, and in the sense of there are resources available, or people who want to help, or things that one could learn. Like it's sometimes getting started with these things could be hard, or could depend on where the person is in their life, or if they're
Mhm.
struggling with other challenges. But I think just hearing some of these realistic, practical kind of messages by itself hopefully gives the audience a sense of these are things that hopefully many people could have access to. You know, they could kind of incorporate. They don't need, yes, if they have the time and the resources, they could kind of work with you directly. That could be really positive. They could
Mhm.
start with just, watching your videos, so to speak, right? Or kind of like getting
Yeah.
started. So I think it's really nice to think. I always try to think of what are the bite-sized ways that one could go in that direction, kind of get going and hopefully develop some healthier routines. So I think it's your message, I think, is a really pragmatic, helpful in that way, which I think are, I think the people who watch this podcast would appreciate that this is like a something that's can be done and can be kind of doable for them.
Yeah, well, it's tangible. And like you said,
For
it's
sure,
meeting them where they're at. So, hey, I'm too busy to work with someone directly.
for
Well, I
sure.
post a less than 5 minute routine every single day. So if you just
Yeah.
do that routine, now I call it the one size fits many. The routine should help a majority of the people, but there's not a one size fits all, or else
For sure,
my
for
job
sure.
would
I,
probably be gone. But
Good.
but if you hit that frustration stage and you keep finding yourself in that perpetual loop, or you just don't want to accept that getting older is, the inevitable for you stopping to live your life with the activities that you
Sure,
want to, then
for sure.
and that's where we can find something specific if you wanted to work with me directly. But I mean, I got so much free content out there. I mean, yeah, if people just want to start there and then just see how they feel, just doing a little bit of work each day. I mean, if you keep moving and you never stop, I mean, you're gonna reach your goals. But just
For
a
sure.
lot of people just, don't know where to start, or they just don't know how to stay consistent. You're good.
I have a question about that. How does someone make the decision that um, doing it alone, doing what comes instinctively or watching your videos might not be enough, that they actually need some professional intervention? How does someone make that decision that, okay, this tells me I need to actually go the next step and get professional intervention or get Mitch's help?
Yeah, so well, either they're trying the routines, and a lot of the stuff is very simple. So like if the simple stuff is like you're breaking a sweat and it's too challenging, usually that's an indication like, hey,
Okay.
let's see specifically what you need, because if these are too advanced, then like just stop doing random stuff. I like to say random actions yields random results, right?
Okay.
But for a lot of people, just a 5 minute routine is something tangible that they can
Yeah.
start to build momentum. But I share, like, for instance, Mondays is hips, Tuesdays is shoulder, Wednesdays is core. So it's a different body area. So if you're doing them and you're like, man, everything's starting to feel better here, but this one area doesn't seem to be improving, then that tells you there might be something further up the stream that we got to address in order for things to start flowing the way that they should. Um, but I'd say that'd be the easy thing. Or if you're just, hey, you don't want to guess anymore, within a 60-minute visit, I mean, we measure everything, your body composition, what your goals are, and hey, here's the plan and basically I develop a physical health report. Where
Mhm.
is your physical health right now as it stands? And then whether you work with me or not, I build you a full, here's how you get from A to B. So either way,
For sure.
people get value, even if they just come in for an assessment.
Sure.
But I suggest I know how your body moves and how it doesn't move. So I'll have the direct playbook for you. But, like you said, it's meeting everybody where they're at.
Yeah,
Great.
that makes sense. Mitch, it's such a fun conversation. We just in the interest in time, we gotta probably end for today. I don't know, any other kind of. We're gonna include all your info, like how to contact you and stuff that we're talking. We're gonna put it kind of in the notes. So, but anything else that you think that kind of the audience should keep in mind? You've already mentioned, I think, a lot of very helpful ideas. Anything, any
Mhm.
kind of last minute thoughts that maybe we didn't get to today?
Yeah, I would just say, if you're wanting to do more, or you just feel like your body doesn't do as much as it did, a couple of years ago, it's not a death sentence. If no one's ever thoroughly assessed your body, then of course it could, where do you start? So
Yeah. Sure.
I think if people just find out how their body moves, understand how it moves, and then it just kind of creates a nice little, you know, detailed report for themselves, but also, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this activity right now based
Yeah.
on how things are moving. So I think a lot of it's just awareness. I think people need to move more, but I think not enough people know how they move because it's never
Yeah.
been measured. So then it's just you're swimming uphill because you don't, or swimming upstream because you don't know, where to
Mhm.
begin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
That makes
uh,
sense. Okay, sounds good. Well, it's a lot of fun talking to you, Mitch, of course. So we
Yeah,
appreciate your
for sure.
time.
I know we didn't talk
And
about posture.
yeah, that's right. Then
What's
we're
a
going to
common one?
we we'll put together the video for everybody, and I'll send it to you, and we're going to share with our kind of community. So just appreciate your time and your thoughts, and let's yeah, I think there's lots of cool collaboration that we could do. So hopefully let's stay in touch and kind of talk about. I think there's lots of cool ways to integrate sort of emotional mental health and movement and physical health. So I think we lots of cool stuff to come. So let's stay
Yep,
in touch
it's all one system.
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Mitch, great to
Yeah.
talk to you. Let's
All
stay in
right,
touch.
Thank
Phil, it
you.
was
Talk to
nice
you
meeting
soon.
you.
Nice
Yep.
meeting you too. Take care. Bye.
All right, bye.